Story 1. Be honest with how you really feel. Don't accept everything because you are different or nice. Stand your ground, especially when you know what the truth is. Story 2. I learned that if you have a mental health issue that is negatively affecting the relationship, you need to take responsibility for it and take consistent constructive action to overcome it. Story 3. What is normal and what is not? What is considered toxic? I had to actually date a few women and talk to many friends about my experiences to understand how bad my ex-girlfriend was to me. If you are unhappy with something your significant other does or does not do, talk to them about it. If they don't change their behavior and you are unable to find a common ground for a long time, there is no point in simply hoping things will magically get better. Story 4. How the little things I do affect her more significantly than I realized. For example, making that extra effort when we're going out so she can take more pride in how we appear together. It took me longer than it should have to realize that sometimes styling my hair is for us, not just me. Story 5. I realized that single me and relationship me are two different people. Self-esteem and mental health issues tend to flare up more often when you're involved with another person. I found a good girl, but the issues I had from my childhood led me to self-sabotage my relationship. These issues didn't affect friendships much, only relationships, and because of that, we broke up. My advice would be to see a therapist and work out all of your issues before entering into a relationship. Story 6. 75% of the time, you do things you don't actually want to do, but you do them anyway. Doing things you don't want to do with somebody you just want to be around is awesome because you find new ways to have fun. Story 7. Not every woman is as toxic as the one that made you think they are all toxic. Once you realize girls are just like us, they poop and eat and cry and overthink the same way we do, it becomes a lot easier. Do not idolize, do not put them on a pedestal, understand they are on our level, and it becomes a lot easier and more natural to be good with women. Story 8. That thing on the internet about no compromise, never admit you are wrong, never give an inch, always win an argument at all costs, does not work in relationships. Story 9. Realizing that it takes effort and care, that a partner is not just a cool friend you can ignore for your own hobbies for endless hours on end, that this person has to come first, and you both need to make sure there is always a priority made for the other. If you take that person for granted and simply assume they will be there, one day they will not. Story 10. Sometimes your partner just falls out of love for you. It can be because of something you did, something he or she did, something small or something big, and there's just nothing you can do about it. No amount of communication can fix the relationship when he or she is already starting to disconnect from you, and that's perfectly fine. Don't blame yourself too. Some people just aren't meant to stay in our lives forever. Most of them are there to teach you a lesson, and it is up to you how you interpret it. Story 11. 1. Just because your people are cool with this person does not mean this person is cool. Your friends may just be fine spending time with problematic people because it's not like they are dating her. Some people, regardless of age or relationship experience, are just not good at being kind, at being considerate, or at being partners. Some people are not equipped to have, recognize, or participate in healthy relationships. You don't actually have to be accepting of people's problems or bad habits. You can walk away from anyone at any time for any reason. The only reason you need is that you want to. Their problems are not your problems. If they've got a problem with that, it's not your problem. Story 12. Went from basically being forever alone, constantly rejected mostly due to my toxic self-image because of childhood abuse and how that reflected on my personality, to being married, and now I am divorcing. So, to answer your question, 1. Speaking your emotional truth, no matter how much it may hurt the other party, is incredibly important. If you hold in your thoughts, you build resentment upon resentment until you start to resent yourself. This translates into fights about nothing, passive-aggressive behaviors, or controlling attitudes, and flights of escapism into addictions, hobbies, other individuals, or self-isolation. Fawning over that person to show how much you care and want to help while subtly trying to control them and change them to meet your unspoken needs will allow you to dehumanize your partner. An aside, if you are unable to speak that emotional truth because every time you have tried before, you were shouted into a corner, belittled, or verbally or physically attacked, then you are most likely in an abusive situation. Knowing yourself, who you are, what your boundaries are, and what your needs are is all incredibly important. If you don't know these and get into a serious relationship where the other person does know these things about themselves, you'll often find yourself in incredibly uncomfortable situations where you are being pulled to match their needs while sacrificing your own. Then this circles back to resentments, frustration, and a breakdown in communication and a whole host of other issues. Trust and healthy, accessible communication are two of the most important aspects of a stable and successful relationship. First off, you have to trust yourself. If you cannot trust your own mind, thoughts, feelings, wants, and needs, you will never be able to trust another person. Second, if the other person does something incredibly damaging and continues to repeat similar patterns of behavior, you will never be able to trust them in the same way as before that action happened. It can be forgiven, but it can never be forgotten. Third, you can and should want to be able to talk to your partner about things that make you both happy and frustrated. They shouldn't be your sole source for this, but they should definitely be privy to your deeper thoughts on issues, beliefs, and wants. Having those external individuals in your village is incredibly important to meeting the needs of you and your relationship. Your partner should never be your sole source of validation, entertainment, or engagement. Both partners should want to please the other partner and not take for granted what the partner does. If both of you are not trying most of the time to make the other happy, then what is the point? Sure, there are moments where one partner may be conducting the happy train, but you better give that person a break, or you're back on the resentment train. Also, different people have different spoken and heard love languages. One may be a gift giver but only hears acts of service. If you find yourself doing 90% and the other party is only doing 10% and does not recognize this, then it is doomed to failure. Last but not least, knowing when to walk away and how to do it with grace will save face. Sometimes it is just not worth the aggravation and difficult times ahead, but you must know this for yourself. You must be able to know when to walk away. It will hurt, but it will save so much pain down the line. Story 13. I had the issue of assuming the worst all the time. I had a big problem with self-sabotaging the relationship. Also, after assuming the worst from her in situations, I would cut deep to make her feel as much pain as I did with my words. I also made the huge mistake of telling her every detail from my past, particularly with other girls. That's my biggest regret because once it's out there, she remembers it all. Luckily though, even with all of those horrible traits, she gave me a chance and taught me how to be a better partner in person. I had to stop blaming her for things she didn't do. I have to think from her perspective in all situations. I've learned to be a considerate person overall. Most importantly, I learned that she truly is a wonderful, genuine person and isn't like the bad people I knew before her. Story 14. Letting go. When they get busy or just don't spend the same amount of time with you as they used to, it takes some practice to be okay with it. Sometimes you manage and move into a relationship you're both content with, and it takes a lot of communication to get that far. Everyone needs reassurance when they're not the reason for something like that happening. Story 15. I'm pretty emotionally distant, so I've had to learn how much support and kind words she needs. Not like I was trying to deprive her. It's just that I wasn't used to it. We've had several discussions since about each other's emotional needs. Story 16. I think for me the hardest part was accepting the fact that it's okay for either or both of us to want time to ourselves and our other friends. When my wife and I were dating, she was the first serious girlfriend I had ever had, so it was all new to me. I wanted to spend every moment with her, and I wasn't always the best at giving her space. Story 17. It is okay to just have a different opinion on what is and is not acceptable in a relationship. Just have to find the best compatibility, really. I myself do not like sex all that much, and that is okay. Just have to make sure that I make that clear, though, before commitments are made. Story 18. I just recently got out of a 5.5-year relationship that started freshman year of high school. I'm still processing a lot of what happened because a lot has been going on in my life since then. What I have learned so far is that it isn't your job to save anyone. I had this knight in shining armor idea about relationships. I based my own happiness and the strength of the relationship on how happy my partner was. This led to me ultimately not caring about my own feelings, which brings me to the second thing. You need to put as much effort into your own emotions as you put into theirs. It shouldn't only be about them or you. As others have mentioned before, emotional maturity is huge in long-term relationships. Toxic masculinity has surrounded me my whole life. I'm glad I've woken up from it and plan on actively working against it. It messed up my first real connection with someone and stopped me from forming connections with others. To all the dudes out there, your significant other should not be your only close friend. You need other people in your life to reach out to. Some other things. Don't underestimate the importance of physical contact. Let them open up on their own terms in their own way. Communication is necessary and should not be one-sided. The little things are important. Relationships aren't always 50-50. Story 19. One thing I learned when I first started dating seriously is that at the beginning, just because a girl is interested in you does not mean you are the only one. You are most likely in competition. And if you want to win out, you have to devote extra time and attention, or you will lose her. I remember with Kelly, I took it for granted that she would just be available when I wanted to hang out. Put in some effort instead of trying to play it cool, and you may be pleasantly surprised. Story 20. 2 things. 1. Taking an active interest in your significant other's hobbies. If you're not doing things to make your significant other feel better about themselves, you're doing it wrong. Story 21. The hardest part for me was not to put the girl I was seeing on a pedestal. I didn't date at all until I was 23. I am a naturally very romantic person. I tend to catch feelings early on, less than a month in, and I am probably way too affectionate and considerate. I think I have let a lot of my prospective partners get away with overstepping my boundaries, as I am forgiving to a fault, which I suspect leads to them losing respect for me. I lose their affection, and ultimately they give me the "we should just be friends" talk, and they move on. I learned this the hard way. My heart has been broken many times since I started dating. I am currently going through a breakup for the usual reasons, and I am pretty demoralized. I always invest more than the other person. It is just how I am. It sucks sometimes. I am not the type of guy to date around or hook up, so I feel like my options are a bit more limited than people who are more open. I am also more susceptible to getting hurt. I guess that is the sacrifice I have to make if I want a long-term love interest. Story 22. Being right doesn't matter if it means you are hurting the ones you love. Just stop arguing and let them be wrong and happy for a day. The world won't end, I promise. Story 23. Don't take petty shots to try and change a behavior you don't like. Comments like, "I'll go take the trash out since apparently no one else is capable," when she is the only one you live with. Instead, I had to learn to say things like, "Hey, it's a little frustrating when I've just worked 12 hours to come home to the trash overflowing when you didn't have to work today. I understand you had things to do. I just wanted to share my perspective and see if you could squeeze in a couple of chores on your days off in the future. I know damn well she played Nintendo Switch all day, but I don't need to diminish her hobbies just because I'm annoyed." Story 24. Avoid "the grass is always greener" thinking and misremembering how difficult being single can be. You might notice attractive women who aren't your girlfriend and think, as I have done many times, "Man, this is frustrating." Monogamy is difficult. Long-term committed relationships are challenging. It's important to remember that being single will likely mean being rejected by those women and will not necessarily mean that you will actually be with them. I've ended many perfectly good long-term relationships out of the frustration of monogamy, only to find, regardless of how much success I have, that being single is far more frustrating and taxing on my mental health. Basically, you will face challenges inside a relationship, and you will face challenges outside of a relationship. Don't think that being single or being in a relationship is going to solve the more fundamental existential issues of life. Story 25. That I can actually be loved. I spent so much time worrying if my girlfriend liked me, wondering why anyone would like me, missing the clear hints that she was into me. Guys, please don't let this happen to you. Sucks even if it did turn out all right. Story 26. Never ever vent to family about how your partner has hurt you if you even have the slightest inclination about continuing the relationship. You may forgive and forget, but your closest and most vociferous friends and relatives will not. Story 27. Willie Nelson sings some words of wisdom here. All the little things I should have said and done but never seemed to take the time. Yes, all the little things that will demonstrate that she is always on your mind. Keep the relationship fresh with spontaneity and impulsive gestures to show her your affectionate admiration.